On Monday, April 27th, our strategic priorities meeting. Roll call, Councillor Kennis is absent with notice. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? None. Motion to approve this evening's agenda. Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Pelkman, all in favor? That motion carries. First matter on the docket is our HR resource policy update. Director Kane will be joining us for that. You just want to give a brief overview. We should have all read it. I didn't have any questions.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, council. So approximately a month ago, I sent the 4 task policies out to council for consideration. I guess the spirit of the policies, just there's general cleanup we've done in the majority of the policies that are before you. I'll pick a couple points of some of the policies to make it prudent for you. The expense and travel policy, the big change there was the CAO's expenses are now approved by the mayor. Previously, that was the director of finance. It's the biggest change, and we had some other general language cleanup there. The vacation policy, the biggest change of vacation policy was the old policy started with 2 weeks vacation for a new hire. We're recommending changing that to 3 weeks to start. What precipitated that, when we bargained with CUPE, that was a bargained area, and they increased that to 3 weeks through bargaining. And I can honestly say 98% of our negotiations that I do, vacation is the number one thing that any member wants. And currently of all municipal staff, we only have 2 municipal staff that are at 2 weeks holidays. Everybody else is at 3 weeks or more. What I mean by that is those 2 people didn't negotiate their holidays, so they were just grateful for an opportunity. They didn't take the opportunity to negotiate that. So that's the biggest change for vacation. The stat holiday policy, basically that's been practice. We're bound to follow the Employment Standards Act on how people qualify for statutory holidays, whether it be full-time or part-time. We're just putting more pen to paper type thing just to solidify that. The bereavement policy, we tightened some language up in there as well. Adding niece and nephew in the provisions for the passing and bereavements. And the other is adding in the event of the death of a municipal employee, we grant a day off there as well for pay. So that in this snapshot, Mr. Mayor, I could talk all day, but open to any questions or feedback for council for sure.
Go ahead. It's good issue.
Yeah, so first one's just for my own knowledge. So if someone gets hired in June and vacation calendar goes from January to December, prorated. Okay. I did notice in the bereavement section that stepchild was missing. So I thought that should be added.
Thank you. That is in our current one. That must have missed hitting the paper here, but that is in our current. So
That may, Doug's already answered my question, but I'll ask it again anyways. So anybody on a long-term disability or short-term disability is not entitled to stat pay. What if they call in sick day before or the day after?
Stat?
Yeah.
That are on disability.
No, if they're working and they call in sick the day before.
So those provisions do, that's the ESA, Employment Standards Act, day before, day after. We have paid sick time. So if I called in sick the day before and they use a sick day, it shifts to the next day. Okay.
But do they still get the stat pay?
Correct, they do. If they had no available time, so if I was out of sick time and it was the day before, they would not get it because they don't have a qualified day for that.
Union contracts get it if.
Correct.
Okay, and it's just the bereavement and just kind of looking at it. I looked at it the other day and then I'm just kind of, it's gonna sound strange, but I honestly do believe that I think a sister, and then you included the stepsister. But you pulled the sister-in-law and brother-in-law as separate and the legal ward or guardian is separate. I don't. To me, you might as well just put that together with the legal ward and guardian, which is in B, right? Like you took it from A, so 5A it's the length of leave, right? So you have, C is brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and legal warden guardian, and then just above that, you've got legal warden guardian, slightly different. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, yep. So so we're not changing any of the provisions for sister and brother-in-law. That's the way it is today.
Oh, that is exactly the way.
That's the way it is today.
Oh, I
Mind you, if council would like to change that.
That's fine. I mean, to me, it seems a bit odd, but it's not anything that's worth fighting over. That's just kind of.
I kept it, I didn't change any of that. So what's written today is there. But I will comment on legal warden guardian and C. I think that is a typo that should be stricken from that.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it's covered in,
It's already covered in B, so
Yep.
I assume that should have been taken.
Yeah.
So. But anyway, it's just a-
I think Deputy Mayor had one first, Steve.
So, thanks. Back to bereavement policy again. I'm just wondering, have you considered, instead of putting all of the brackets in five, I guess it's 5A1, where it's length of leave, and you know, sister bracket, including step. My suggestion would be put your definitions up in the definition section, so that sister includes boom, 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 boom. And then your reading of it is much simpler. You just refer back to your definitions. We know, so brother, okay, my brother died. I don't have a brother, so I don't mind talking about this. My brother dies. I get 5 days. Well, what about my stepbrother? Go back to the definitions. Brother includes stepbrother, foster brother,
Could you not do brother?
whatever it is.
As well.
What's that?
Could you not do
Disagree. I
brother?
think it's easier to read it the way it is now.
What's that?
I think it's easier to read it the way it is now. Otherwise, someone's hopping back and forth between.
Yeah, see,
There's a difference in when you're a brother, you get something different from brother-in-law.
well, I'm not suggesting brother-in-law, because brother-in-law is different than brother, but brother being a stepbrother, a foster brother, right? So like, if you look at most legislation, your definitions are up top. They're not defining stuff down in the, so it's just a thought. I really don't care, because I'm not interpreting this one, nor do I have to negotiate it. But to me, it's much simpler to put definitions up top.
Any more?
Just again, for common law relationships, I'm assuming if you were common law and one of your common law spouse's kids died, that would be considered a stepchild.
Correct.
Yep, good.
Great. On the statutory holidays, just a question about National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Is that a federal or provincial holiday?
provincial.
Federal.
Federal, sorry.
And we
Federal,
follow,
sorry.
we follow both as a municipality, right?
In the current bylaw, it says federal, provincial, or municipal proclaimed holidays.
The other question I have about that day in particular is when we have events, we typically do them 3 or 4 days before. As at one point, it was like almost 5 days before. I think we did it on the 22nd or 23rd or something instead of the 30th. And we had problems with getting people to come out on the different days. And then when I think about Remembrance Day, we always do something on the day. But with that being a statutory holiday, how does the municipality do things to celebrate that and to keep that day moving if it's a holiday and nobody's here? Because I remember having a discussion at council where staff didn't want to book anything on that day because it was a holiday. So how does that work? Like, just, it's an actual holiday and we're going to take it and celebrate it, but we're not actually going to celebrate it because we need the day off. Like, those two things don't really align. So how does that work in this policy?
That's a fairly large question. So one, statutory, this deemed a statutory holiday, given it's federal, but it's deemed statutory holiday. We're, to your point, we're closed on statutory holidays. Unless some programming is, we do have some staff work different programmings. Town hall is closed. I think where your question is alluding to is, what are we doing to celebrate or remember that particular stat? So I had a discussion last week specifically about truth reconciliation. What can we do as staff leading up to the truth reconciliation and programming? I think that's why Director Lilborn just jumped in. I was talking to a curator at the museum and we're having some discussions can we do some programming and some education for staff leading up to that holiday to recognize it, so.
We did something last year. I think it was a day before. Go ahead. Rob.
Just with regards to Remembrance Day, the municipality itself does not do anything on Remembrance Day specifically. It's the legions that hold those events. The poppies that you would have seen installed were done prior to Remembrance Day, so staff were working on Remembrance Day. It allows the opportunity for staff, in this case, for Remembrance Day, to attend those services. So the municipality doesn't run those events. It's run by the Legion. With regards to Truth and Reconciliation, we're looking, and the curator, thank you to Michelle, is looking at what some programming will look like for us, not necessarily on the day, but leading up to the day, to better represent and reflect on what Truth and Reconciliation is. So,
You think you're okay, Greg?
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
So as Strathroy gets to be more multicultural, how are we dealing with when somebody who has a different religion other than Christianity requests their holiday rather than Christmas or anything?
That's a great question. So part of that stat holiday policy, there's religious observance there. How we're proposing to handle it, and it's very typical. We recognize the Employment Standards Act for statutory holidays and any other proclaimed holiday. There's many different faiths that have different followings and religious observances. So we provide ESA, which is Employment Standards Act of Ontario. If somebody asks for a Greek Orthodox or whatever it may be, we're not saying no, but then they could just use vacation days or other time available to them. So, and that's pretty common.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Councilor Derbyshire.
Thank you. On the 3 weeks vacation time that we want to give, how standard is that in Ontario at this point? And at 5 years, then would they move up to 4 weeks vacation? Or would they stay at 3 until they would actually move to what then would be, or are we starting a new standard of
No,
3 weeks?
Great question. So it'd be 7. They'd stay at that for 7 years. So the first part of your question, how standard is it? It's definitely a moving, it's shifting. Can I give you an exact stat in Ontario, what companies offer first at 3 weeks? I can't give you that stat, but I'll speak municipal governments. The ones I've researched, and I've researched probably 25 different municipalities, over half are giving 3 weeks at the start. The premise of that is through negotiation. So good talent is hard to get. And the first thing 90% of people is vacation. It's important. It's important to them, and they negotiate vacation. So it comes down to, are you going to lose a hire over a 1 week's vacation? That's really what it comes down to. So that's why we're
3 weeks.
What's that?
Or 3 weeks.
And I guess all I was asking was how close are we to the standard, or are we trying to set the new trend? And I realized most municipalities probably will move to 3 weeks, but is that the standard?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're leading the pack to change the standard. The standard's already changed.
So the employment standard,
Okay, so the Employment Standards Act, the legislation says 2 weeks. That's the legislation. You have to give 2 weeks holidays. But when I say the standard, workplaces, they're trying to be the employer of choice, attraction, and part of that attraction is giving 3 weeks at the start.
all employers now give 3 weeks.
Yeah, just asked a good old.
Jesse,
Did you have a question?
60% of professional.
No, I did have a question.
Deputy Mayor has a question.
So out of all I'm looking at in the statutory holiday one, and we refer to statutory holidays, but I'm just being picky because I read statutory holidays and I see all these holidays, and some of them are civic holidays. They're not statutory holidays from the definitions in other legislation. Has that ever been confusing to people that were? I'm not against the list at all, Doug. It's just
I know where you're, I know
We
where you're
sat
going.
across the table,
I'm
right?
gonna say, no, it hasn't been confusing because any employer can deem any day a holiday. Like,
Absolutely,
Right,
but
so
we
they're
call them
deemed-
statutory holidays.
by the letter of the law, I know coming from you, from a legal perspective,
Oh, we've sat and argued over this before.
Right. there hasn't been any confusion.
Okay,
If it's deemed,
yeah,
I'll give it civic holiday. That's not a statutory holiday by law.
no, no. Yeah,
It's
Family
not
Day,
stat.
yeah,
Right, so, but it is a deemed statutory holiday. I think there's really been no
Okay.
confusion, but.
good enough.
Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, motion to receive this report for information. Counselor Pelican, second by Counselor Hippel, all in favor? Motion carries.
Is that with the addition of stepchild?
I received it for information, right?
So-
You'll make the addition when it comes back to council.
Mr. Merrick, may I ask a question?
Yes.
I have the stepchild noted. Deputy Mayor McGuire made a suggestion. Is that something that we wanted to do or not, or?
I prefer it the way it is.
You have to bring it back to.
I have to bring it back. I'll bring these back to council.
council for ratification.
I do.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Next up is the municipal debt and reserve funding analysis. So I think we'll do this, let Bill go through it. But fairness sake, all the questions to the very end. We'll have a few, so Bill, the floor is yours and we'll save our questions until you're done.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we're going to do a look at the understanding of our financial position based based beyond the surface numbers. Specifically, what we're going to be looking at is cash, debt, reserves, and how they work together. While our financial statements show strong reserve balances, there is an important distinction between what is committed and what is actually available in cash. This presentation will highlight this gap, explain why it exists, and outline practical steps to strengthen the financial discipline. The key message here is this, that we are in a stable position today, but we need clear policies and structure to ensure that the stability continues as we move forward with significant capital and infrastructure commitments. So we're going to be looking at here, I'm going to be walking us through three areas. First, our financial trends over time. Second, our current and proposed debt position. And then third, our reserve structure and how it relates to cash. What we're looking at here is the trend from 2009 to 2024, and this is a financial snapshot. This is a long-term trend is very clear that our cash has grown, debt has remained controlled, and our net financial assets have improved significantly. To be clear, the municipality is financially stable based on these indicators. One of the things I want to point out here is this is from our financial statements. So you'll notice it's a difference once we move into the debt piece. You'll see that there's a difference in the debt simply because this is consolidated. So any entities that we have ownership in, we have to report a portion of debt as well as their receivables, those kinds of things. And just to distinguish, cash is cash. So that's liquid assets that are available for immediate use. Debt is strictly looking at the debt piece. And then net financial assets is the difference between what we own and what we owe. So if you look at 2023, for example, in 2023, we actually owed 3 million more than we owned. And as you look at 2024, we actually own, 42 million more than we owe. So that's a distinction here as we move through. This is based on financial statements, which look at the accrual process.
Good question on
Yeah.
that. So the 9 million, is that only money that's owed to financial institutions or money that's owed to financial institutions and our own reserves?
So that is owned to financial institutions. So
We do it there, say all, I think, questions at the end, Steve, okay?
Yep.
That's everybody, just so Bill can go through it.
So this is a visual, basically reinforces those trends that we just saw. Steady financial improvement. However, strong trends do not necessarily reflect liquidity or flexibility. And that's what we're going to be looking at tonight. So municipal debt. Our current debt levels are relatively low and manageable. The key issue is how we finance upcoming capital, not necessarily our current debt load. Here, we have a number of completed projects that were intended to be financed through debt, and council now needs to decide how to formalize that financing. And that's what we're looking at here. So the top portion, the four projects there, you can see that is our current debt. So that is that debt that we have taken out. Everything below the completed projects to be debentured are those projects that have been completed since debt has been issued. And now we're looking at what do we do with that. And then finally, you'll see in the 26 budget, there's the police annex, which will be an issue at some point coming up to council. So here you see existing debt, 2026. So basically that is currently at the end of 2026. That is what we're, in 2026, that's what we started the year with. We started the year with just about $700,000 in debt, and our current payments are about $474,000. After 2026, so in 27 to 2030, we have about $243,000 in debt, and debt payments over that time period will be about $65,000. So our current listing of completed projects where debt was budgeted and operating cash was used, now awaits debenture, was about 19 million in that previous slide. So we basically have three options here. We can fully debenture everything. We can partially debenture and internal borrow, or we can primarily internal borrowing. And so that's what we're, so what I've done is split out a couple options there. So debenture all of everything, our estimated debt payments would be about 1.3 million. If we debenture some, so then this is where we start splitting out. And in that previous slide, I kind of highlighted like the Station 1 and a couple of major roads projects come to about the 17.3 million. Some of the smaller projects are about 1.6 million. If we sort of split the difference, not split the difference, but looked at two ways of dealing with that debt, we'd have those two two options there. So when it comes to debt, we need to look at three things. There's three actions that we need to look at. Establish our debt policy, which we brought back to you once. One of the highlights in that discussion, the original, was the missing piece on the self-funding, so where we would fund internally ourselves. So we need to add that into that debt policy before it comes back to the council. So we're working on that piece right now. The other thing is we need to also identify internal borrowing already that's taking from reserves and from reserve funds. And then finally, establish a policy that includes, that piece on the self-borrowing. This is where the core issue becomes very clear. How reserves function versus how cash is actually available. So here, what I'd like to point out is reserves are really just internal allocations. And reserve funds are restricted and obligated. And so using this slide, you can see that under how are they established? First of all, let's look at just legal requirements. Reserves, is there a legal requirement? No. With reserves funds, there is. And so we go first, just maybe up to the top there, where reserves are really like a sticky note placed on a portion of our balance saying for future equipment, for instance. And reserve funds are a separate envelope of money where the money legally must be used for a specific purpose. So if we go through this chart, you can see under reserves, are they legally required? No. How are they established? Through council policies or resolutions. Is there segregated cash for reserves? No. Flexible? Very. So you can move within those reserves. What's the purpose? Budget planning. Then we go to reserve funds. Legal requirement, often required by legislation. Again, how are they established? Bylaw or legislation. Cash segregated, usually tracked separately. So typically, most reserve funds are backed by cash. So if you've got a reserve fund, you should have cash to match it. The flexibility, their use is very restricted. The purpose is legal or dedicated funding. And we're going to see some examples of that as we move forward. So these numbers are as of the end of 2025 in preparing for our financial statements. These are the numbers that we pulled. So this is the cash. We have approximately 71 million in cash and investments available at the end of December. So that's cash in the bank and investments. Next, we also have approximately 86 million in reserves and reserve fund commitments. These represent planned or restricted uses. So when we reconcile these two, 71 million in cash, as opposed to the 68 million in commitments, that creates a gap of approximately 14 million. This is not missing money. It reflects internal borrowing and timing differences. It does not mean at all that reserves are fully backed by cash. We've used reserve-backed funding to advance capital projects ahead of the full cash accumulation. This is a common practice, but it must be controlled and repaid deliberately. The actions are very clear. Regular reconciliation, identify internal borrowing, establish reserve policies, and develop a repayment plan. These are standard financial controls. In closing, I just want to say the municipality remains financially stable. with strong reserve balances and manageable debt. However, there is a structural gap between our reserve commitments and the available cash that requires attention. The actions before council are straightforward. Formalize our debt strategy, implement clear reserve policies, and actively manage internal borrowing. By taking these steps now, we can protect our flexibility, improve our transparency, and ensure that we are setting up both current and future councils for long-term financial sustainability. In simple terms, we're in a solid position today, but we need clear rules and discipline to protect our position in the future. Here's one final thought. Strong finances aren't just about how much we have, they're about how we manage what we've committed. That's the end of the presentation. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thanks, Bill. I'll get around to the question. Just a couple of things for council. We're not giving clear direction or action tonight is to get information from Bill and maybe some suggestions moving forward. So we'll do that. I'll just have one question and I'll turn over to council. The money we took, 19 million to pay all the projects, Bill, I asked this one, did it come out of reserves or reserve funds, or was it a combination? So I think that kind of frames, and it just, could just said reserve funds are obligatory.
So the actual cash for those came out of our operating bank account.
Okay.
They haven't came out of either reserve or reserve funds yet.
Okay.
That's what we're waiting on.
Okay,
So typically, if you recall, council recalls when we did our budget, capital projects show, here's how they're being funded. So what we said is there was about $19 million in projects that we were going to take out loans on, that we haven't taken out loans yet. So what we did is spent out of the operating cash account, that money to be replenished when we take out the debt. So we're waiting on that to make that decision to take out that debt.
Wait, no, Councilor Wilsey has his hand up. Go ahead, Greg.
Sure, so that $14 million difference between the reserve and funds, once we take out the $19 million debt, I'm thinking that should be caught up, then we'll have $5 million extra is from what you're saying.
Exactly.
Should be.
Yeah.
The other question is on the slide that you showed, if you could bring it up, the 2009 to 2024 financial snapshot.
You see through my head there?
It's slide 3.
Yep.
I'm looking at the explanations at the bottom, and I'm doing the math as you go across the column. Can you explain to me what those 3 columns are? Because if I take cash minus debt, in my mind, that should give us net financial assets. But that math doesn't work for any of the ones after, like the first 3 years. Because it says we got 66 million and then 9 million in debt, but only 42 in assets. So is there more debt or less assets, or how does that math work?
Okay, so what we're talking about is net financial assets. So net financial assets is taking all of our assets, so cash only being one of them. You'd have cash, you'd have accounts receivable, you'd have, for instance, in our case, we have the money owing from the Strathroy-Caradoc Housing Corp. That's showing up as a receivable on ours. So that would be all part of assets. Debt is, again, one portion of that. Liabilities. So you'd have debt, you'd have accounts payable that's outstanding, any loans outstanding would all be within that liability. So the net financial assets is the netting of those 2 categories. You're seeing here on this slide under cash and debt, one component of each of those categories. So there's other items within those categories that make up assets and liabilities. And then the net financial assets is the difference between those 2.
So with that, just to follow up, I'm gonna just look at 2024 because there's like a 17 or $18 million gap there. Could that potentially be because we self-funded 17 or $18 million? But I don't understand how your cash and your debt, and if there's more in both categories, So it seems like everything outside of what you've shown here, negative $17 million in 2024.
I think be best to probably look at the financial statements, the audited financial statements. I don't know the answer offhand, but I can grab that and see what components are in assets and in liabilities.
It's probably not that important, but just, it's off by 17 million. We'll leave it.
Well, it's not off by 17 million.
Well,
What it is it's depicting what we have in the sense of cash and debt, and then the third column, which is our net financial assets.
Right, and that
Net
third column
financial
is
assets.
$17 million lower than
Excuse
the
me,
other.
Counselor, I had the floor. Net financial assets is the difference between all of our assets and all of our liability.
Right, so from your description there, then we have 17 million more in assets or more in liabilities than assets if you look at everything else. Because it's 17 million lower than the math for most departments. So that's fine. Okay.
He's hand up to this person, but I think Deputy Mayor Sushi.
I just want to focus in on two definitions because it really helps me get my mind around it. So there was a question by the mayor that said payment of something from reserves or reserve funds. And that's what I cued in on. To me, reserves, and I did have this conversation with you an hour ago, 2 hours ago. Reserves are ideas that we may move in the future. One, I think of a reserve, an idea,
New
new arena for Mount Bridges. Thank you. New arena for Mount Bridges is like that could be a reserve because there's no money behind it, but we know we want to do it. Or it could be a future road project. There's no money behind it, but we know it's coming down the pike towards us. We want to keep it in front of us. A reserve fund would be something where we put money behind it. So the idea has now moved from the reserve category, which is kind of a conceptual concept, and we start putting money behind it. That money goes into a reserve fund, and that concept moves into the reserve fund envelope. So we could never pay for something from a reserve. We could get rid of something out of the reserve that lowers what we anticipate spending in the future. But we can't pay anything out of there because there's zero balance in it. Am I correct on that, or am I missing a piece of this?
So I would say you're partially right. So reserve funds are always backed by money.
Okay.
So in our example, if I come down here, you see our DC bank account, 34.8 million. Okay. If I go here, our DCs are 23 million. So we actually have more cash for DCs, which are reserve funds, than we do actual outstanding, or as we're calling it, the commitment of DCs. So we collected 23 million of DCs, but again, part of the timing on all this stuff and moving stuff between accounts hasn't taken place yet. So in theory, your reserve fund just simply on your DC bank account should match these. These two numbers should match because it's a DC fund. It's fairly straightforward. Reserves are basically a sticky note saying, so a good example is the roads runs a surplus. We move that at the end of the year with council. We go to council saying, here's all our reserve fund transfers. We say we're moving $500,000 into reserves, the road reserve. The money is sitting in the operating account because we've collected that money this year through taxation, but we move a placeholder of $500,000 into that roads account.
But the money is sitting in office.
Because it's a reserve, not a reserve fund. If we want a roads reserve fund, then what we need to do is move that money over and put it there and allocate it as such.
Or Councilor Brennan.
Thank you very much for the floor. Just a little perspective here. It wasn't a lot of fun to get elected to council in 2010. And Steve, remember how underwater we were. And we have a meeting like this. and our hair was on fire. We were basically bankrupt. And it got worse during that term, 2011, 2012, 2013. We were in a nosedive. And 2014, okay, the previous council made things a little bit better. We started pulling out of it. 2018, things were getting better. 2022, things were going better. What happened in each of those terms was there was competent fiscal management, long-term vision, the idea that we're digging ourselves out of a hole. And it took a decade. And, you know, the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago, they always say. So where we're sitting right now, in comparison to where we were 10 or 15 years ago, this was the dream where we are right now. We dreamt of this, do you remember? Of being able to be in a position to be like one of those other lower tier municipalities that had 50 or 60 or $70 million in the bank. I remember it was always like one of the other, right, Steve, was it Middlesex Center always had all kinds of money in the bank, and we had, and we said, like, how the hell did we get in this position? We got to dig ourselves out of this. Well, the good news is we have. It's taken 10 or 15 years, and there were a lot of meetings and a lot of hysteria, and we didn't even know sometimes we were going to meet payroll. Remember those days, Steve? It was that bad. We owed way more than we owned. So we're in this position now because of the collective action of councils and staff of the last 15 years. And we're in a very enviable position right now where we can take a look at our assets and our liabilities, our future liabilities, and we can come up with some ideas here that are going to continue passing the baton forward. I'm hoping 10 years from now, another council will sit around and take a look at the last 25 years of things and say, look how they managed to meet the requirements of infrastructure while still maintaining a healthy bank balance. And so we have some choices here, and I'm just wondering, you know, which is the, and I'm no financial expert, you know, which is the best and most well-balanced method we have to continue the strong recovery that we've had over the last 10 years. So really, I'm just trying to exercise some gratitude here. It took a long time to get here, and we need to make some good decisions for a couple or two so that they'll look back and say, wow, we're in a good position because a wise decision was made about how to handle this. So I'm just looking forward to figuring out, you know, what's the best of the options that are in front of us to continue this long-term trend. So that's just a comment.
I just got to ask a question. Bill, I have just, and the one's been bothering me, the 85 and the 71. Is there any fiscal practice, municipal finance practice that says the two have to balance? Or is this just, you know, you want to have, it's nice to have, that's the question. Is there a number or ratio that's ideal between the two of them?
So,
Like, it looks up there, it looks alarming, right?
So-
We're at a $14 million gap, but
so most municipalities have about 30% cash to back reserves. If you look at us, we're 83%.
so there's no legislation. I really don't know, regulatory.
The only regulatory information is on like DCs as an example. Anything where we're bound by legislation to set aside those funds.
Good.
All of our reserve funds are backed by cash.
That's an important number for me to remember, the 30%. But you have a question for Councilor Derbyshire? I don't go to Councilor Paul.
I just for simple, because I'm simple, my brain's simple. Can you walk me through both of these? The operating account is actual cash that we have in a bank that we operate daily function out of. Am I correct in that?
It's like your checking account at home.
Okay, so that is cash that we walk in and let's use the ATM. We're gonna get money up. We're gonna pay bills, this, that.
Good part of work, mine won't work.
The DC bank account. That is the account where we take all the DCs that we've collected and they sit there, right?
Until we use them.
Until we use them. They are specifically reserved for development charges, cannot be used willy-nilly anywhere else. Abinio, the investment, what is this money and where is it allocated to?
So what we do is we allocate, so the BMO investment one,
Better question, what was it collected from or intended for? That I know we're using it as to pull investments, but
it's money that was existing before I came. So that's investments that free, where cash has been moved into investments to tie into reserves or reserve funds.
Okay.
Yep.
The next one's pretty self-explanatory. That's the reserve fund bank. So that is,
So that's where we would tend to move. So if council said, we want that 500,000 from the roads department to become like a reserve fund, we would take that 500,000 and move it into that bank.
that would become its own. And then again, we'll go.
Also security deposits. So if we collect slot grading deposits or,
So
like,
it has a
security, it goes
specific
in there.
function itself, right? It's not like, hey, we've got this sitting, we're gonna go down and write a check for a new arena. Not that we're building a new
No,
arena, Rob.
no.
The BMO investment, the 20 million there, where,
So that was in 2023. We had over 50 million in the bank, earning less than 1%. So we
so
took
this is actually cash then that
cash
you decided you wanted to pull it out and
and
create
move it in.
projects.
Now we're making close to 2 million in investment interest.
And I understand that's where it should be. What I'm trying to establish is where the money is, how it's accounted for and why.
So what I was getting at in the presentation is now going through and delineating all of these, saying, all right, this reserve is a reserve. So there's no cash backing it. It's just a reserve. This is a reserve fund, i.e. DCs, which we already know that one's pretty straightforward. But
Yeah.
some of the other ones, we need to say, what are reserves and what are reserve funds?
Well, with this, I just like, here's where we total the 71.
Yeah.
And then when you move to the next slide, we go through, this is what I'm going to say is getting taken off of, for lack of a better term, the 71.
Yeah.
So that's,
It's 71 earmarked or previous surplus earmarked for specific things.
like, this is 85
Yep.
here. So I guess when I go back, this here is everything put in a lump sum. If we, let me ask you this question. If somebody came and said, look, here's what you owe us today, is this what we would have to somehow pay out as 85 million?
No. So
Okay.
some of those are reserves. Some of those are reserves. So that's just basically a sticky note saying that down the road, we've got this money set aside that we're going to use at some point.
So 10 million of these say reserve. The
Yeah.
rest say funds and obviously, or 11, let's call it 11 million. Right?
Right.
So we take that off, even of 85, we're short then about 5 million to be in square.
We're not short. We've allocated more because of a
Like
timing
we
issue.
borrowed. So we
We
borrowed against ourselves
Yes,
where we're at.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we could actually say, we don't need to take the 19 million in debt. Because really and truly, you took 50 million or 30 million on back here, 20 million and said, whoa, we got a whack of cash, let's invest it. But that whack of cash would have been taxes collected or something collected for projects, right? Like, we don't just build a great big surplus out of the kindness of
Right.
people's hearts.
Well,
That's what, I know you're going on that with you on now, you got the money. So if you took off, Bill, your sticky notes, right, that your 85 is based on this concept of sticky notes. If you were to remove some sticky notes, that 85 would go down.
Well, at some point, somebody put sticky notes and we built up $20 million. Or we overtaxed and got 20 million to shove somewhere.
Projects that canceled.
no, there's no overbalancing, obviously,
But how do you get that money then?
by not doing capital projects. And now the roost has come back and we just finished station 1. It's now been paid out of cash and it was supposed to be debenture. So we were supposed to take a loan to put that money back into the bank account.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You have to go to Councilor Dahl.
Yeah, so I think I can answer some of them. So this is both water, sewer and
Everything.
right. So a lot of that was that in the water and the sewer, we identified some big projects that were coming in the future. So we took some big increases because we know that as we start, we weren't expecting $15 million to help us out in the Strathroy sewer plant, right?
I do
That was
appreciate that.
That was expected to come out of here.
But that is my point, then this actually here, this investment isn't cash. If what that is out of water and wastewater, that's users. So that has to be specifically used.
It is cash, but it's somewhat identified for projects in the future because it could only be used for water and sewer. So what we did find is that when we were cash strapped, we couldn't redo a street because we had to have the tax money to do streets. So water and sewer had cash, so they took on a larger portion of redoing the streets.
Which I understand. This is, my point is when we talk about what's supposed to go to certain groups and where it goes, users pay water and sewer. So maybe users can go in between the two. I think we should be
So
careful there.
you can borrow. So this is again, getting back to the earlier discussion, which is we need clear governance, which is policies. So we can borrow against our water and wastewater reserves, which is user fees, but there's rules around how that happens, and you got to be paying them back, right? You can borrow against each other, but you're going to have to pay those back. So instead of going out and getting a loan, you're borrowing from yourself, but now you make the payments to yourself. And again, with user fees, there's regulations around interest rates, all sorts of stuff that have to be charged. Whereas if it's a reserve fund that we own ourselves and we put the sticky note on it, then we can say, hey, we're not going to charge ourselves interest. So it's just going to be so that's where the reserve policy and the debt policy come into play. Those two policies then would feed off each other saying, all right, we're going to agree, council agrees that we're going to borrow out of our water reserve because we got a lot of money in our water reserve and we don't have projects coming for another 20 years. So we're going to borrow that money, and by 20 years from now, when we have that project coming up, we'll have already repaid ourselves.
I appreciate that. I do understand. It does help simplify and make it easier. I guess where I'm coming from is I just want to make sure that we understand as council. You guys get it.
Yep.
And probably some of council gets it. There's some of us sitting here that don't, and I will put my hand up and say, I don't get it. Just because I like probably a little more explanation and maybe a deeper spot as to where we are committed and where we aren't committed. And when we say we're not going to do projects, if we've taxed for these projects and said we're going to budget for these, and they've been part of a budget that we pulled taxes out of, how does that work when we come back and say, well, we did tax for it, but we're not doing it now?
So if we go back to the first slide, we were in trouble. Sorry?
Parkhouse would be a great example.
Yeah, Parkhouse. So Parkhouse started in 2018. And because of dealings with the two developers, that keeps getting pushed down the road, right? So we had money set aside back in 2018. That project, I think, originally came on around 2 million. We're at I think it's 9 million in the 26 budget. So part of it is that as we push these projects down because of either something else came up that was more pertinent than or more desired than that original project. And that was the case back here in the early 2000s, in 2010, 2011, 12, 13, we were pushing off capital projects just so that we could get our money back in the house. Now those projects have come back, and instead of it happening when it was supposed to happen, it's now happening later and it's costing more. Those kinds of things happen. And that's kind of where we're at. And so one of the things to get away from that is to look at the long-range financial plan, which is coming forward this year as well. That's going to say, here's the next projects for the next 20 years, and here's how we're going to fund them. This is the piece to that puzzle.
So Bill, we're getting more quick. I think what we need to see, I don't think we need to wait for the debt policy, because we do have, because we would like to do, I think council as a whole would like to figure out what to do with the ones that need to be diminished. So at some point in time, I think we need to see the report. How would we pay each one of those? How would we, the recommendation is, I like the three options personally. I don't want to take on the debt if I don't we don't have to. So how would that reflect budget? What would each of the options look like financially? So we have verbiage, but it'd be nice to see actual numbers with it. This is what the options look like, right? Because I know, thinking of the fire station, I believe a piece of that could be funded through the DCs, like, I think I saw that, right? So we don't have to debenture the whole amount, right? So what would it look like, the debt on that? Using that one as an example.
So I'll use that one as an example. So part of the reason certain amount of DCs were available for that fire station. So what happens is, if you look up on the screen, fire station is 10 million and the payments are 633,559. So what we would do is, if that came out, a portion, the percentage that's eligible through DCs would be pulled from DCs, the payment. And the residual amount, the money that isn't covered off by that, would come out of taxation. So we would split the payment between DCs, partly paid by DCs and partly paid by, and that was, if you look up at West Middlesex Arena, for instance, up top, we've got outstanding 133,000 is the outstanding principal. Our payments for 2026 are 134, so the difference is the interest, obviously. So that 134 is coming out of DCs because we put that as a DC project. So all of the funds to pay for that loan payment come out of DCs, not out of taxation.
So I know it's a lot of work, excuse me. But they're all different. They could be each funded differently, right? There's an opportunity to fund each of them differently. So I think it would be bogus to have each one of those separate and how we can fund them, because we may make individual decisions based on, right? That's just my ask, and I know, I'll get you Greg, Steve's hand up, then we'll go to Greg.
So in that second section where you have the payments, so Drury Lane, Agnes Drive, those are actually potential payments, because at the moment we took that money out of the bank and they're paid for it.
Yes, we gotta get paid, we gotta get that money paid back though.
Right, so they're potential repayment to ourselves.
Right.
Okay, just wanted to make that clear that it's not, we're not paying the
No,
Bank of Montreal.
Not yet,
No.
but
But we
if
could-
if you decide to debenture these, then you would pay,
Right, but at the moment, they're not payments.
there's no payments on the.
Right.
Because they're not actual debentures yet. That's where we need the direction of council.
So
The next.
in the amount of time, when going back to this list of cash in the bank, there was a good 10 years there where we didn't take on a project unless we could pay for it within that calendar year. And that's why McKellar got done in sections and it remains unfinished. That's why Keller Street remains unfinished, because there just wasn't enough cash to do the whole thing. Now, though, we're facing larger projects where we have to, right? I mean, how much money did we spend on Queen all the way out to Caradoc Sands? That was like 14 million bucks between the drainage issues and all that, right? So we did face those kind of issues in that 10 years. We did stuff like Beach Street and which were $1 million at a time, right? So I mean, I get the process to me here and the charts that we're looking at is helpful, because it gives me an idea collectively what we have in the bank versus what we owe, which shows me we're in a really good position. We can make it as complicated as we want by breaking it out into all the different counts, which is kind of what we see at budget time, right? And so then you kind of lose this information. The more you break it out, the more you lose. I do kind of agree that the water and the sewer stuff, I think, we want to see that separate, and what we have to put back in the reserve funds, make sure that money is there. I would really hate to see us go out to get a bank loan for anything. We have this much cash on hand. I would much rather see a policy where we're repaying ourselves, and making sure that the money's put back into the accounts, that is supposed to be at. And that would be where those potential payments would come back in. I would just want to see them as payments to ourselves rather than the Bank of Montreal or wherever else.
Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
So my question is, did we take 19 million out of? Or do we have to restock or refill reserve funds? To get ourselves whole to this 85, right? Is that simply just, you took it out of instead of 6 million in this operating account, that operating account would then add another 20 million to it, just for easy numbers?
Easy
And
numbers,
if that's
exactly right.
Okay,
So
so
we
if
paid
that's
it
the
down, so
case,
now that's why there's a discrepancy between the two. Because what we've done is spent the cash, but we haven't dealt with the commitment, right? Where are we taking it from? So I need direction from council saying, take it out of X reserve or X reserve fund.
well, we've already paid for those projects.
But you've also got commitments over here of 85 million.
No, but thank you. This is what I'm trying to make the point. We didn't have an extra 19 million.
No.
Right, which is what it's sounding like in here.
It's
Like, oh, we are flush with cash, we got lots of cash.
But if we were to go back, as Councillor Wilsey pointed out, when he brought up the point, you take the $19 million, put it back into cash, you add, let's just make it simple, 20 million,
Yeah,
okay?
just for easy.
20 million, that goes to 91, this stays at 85.
Right,
Now you've got 5 million to the good.
which I understand,
Well, what-
as long as that's where.
You've
it
got
came
more
from.
cash than you've got commitments. It's
But
got,
have
it's not
we
a,
taken some of this out of any reserves or any of that? It all came out of cash.
because that's where the cash is.
Okay,
The
so
commitments is-
can I get a commitment then? I guess what I would want to see is, where are our commitments? Bring us all the sticky notes, everything we've committed. How do we get to 84 or 85?
Yep.
How do we get to there?
all the different reserves and reserve funds. Keeping in mind, reserves have $0 attached to them. They are sticky notes saying this is what we're gonna use. Reserve funds have actual funds attached to them. Again, going back, the easy one is the DCs. You look at what we're saying we have in DCs is 23 million. We look at the cash, we got 34 million. So we got 11 million extra in cash than what our commitment is.
Yes,
There's other ones where it's the other way, where we're saying we've got cash, but we don't have the cash to back up a reserve, which is legal. It's not illegal.
I'm not looking
Yeah, no,
to nail anybody
no, no,
down.
no,
I'm looking to
and
just
I'm not-
clarify
I'm
it
not
to the
suggesting-
simplest bottom number of where are we at? Did we take it out of cash? If we took it out of cash, then that makes not actually going and get debt a heck of a lot easier.
But keep in mind all the other projects you got coming up down the road. So you got your cash flow. So let's talk about, if I can do it, I'll try.
Yeah,
Combine.
yes,
Okay, you go out, you got the money, you go out, buy your combine,
right,
make it easy, $1 million.
right,
Okay? 2 years from now, your major tractor breaks down. You've spent your $1 million on your combine. Now, you gotta go buy your tractor, you don't have it. So now you gotta take out a debt. Take out debt on the tractor. That is what we're looking at. How do we spent the money. Do we want to put the money back into the account for the combine so that if our tractor goes, now we can decide, hey, I'm gonna take half of that out of my operating account and I'm gonna take half in debt. It gives you flexibility. The more you spend the cash, the less flexibility you have.
yes. And I understand that. What I'm worried is that we did something more along the lines of, I needed a combine, but I have a bunch of payments. But really, those payments aren't really quite due until I completely take all the feed or all the gravel or all of this. So I'm gonna go buy the combine with all this cash that I should be, these will come due at some point.
Mhm.
And hopefully I've harvested with this combine I have and restocked the cash. That's what I'm asking you. Do we need to restock the cash, or did I actually have the extra million to buy the combine and I can still afford to pay the gravel, pay the seed and pay the this? That is my question is, I don't want to say rob Peter to pay Paul because I don't mean this in a negative context
right.
whatsoever. I understand why you did it. I understand why we self-fund, why pay interest when you have money in there. Do we need this money back to make us whole?
We don't need the money to make us whole, but what we do need the money for is future projects, if we're gonna do them. Otherwise, everything going forward is gonna be 100% debt.
But to answer the
And
question,
that's a generalization.
Yeah. No, but we're getting closer to.
no, but I think, sorry, Steve, Mike, you had one, do you remember what it was?
Yeah, it's up down the line of what you were talking about. I'm on the same slide. So on the slide, so are some of the obligatory reserve funds or discretionary reserves, are some of those projects that have a price tag attached to them but no funding? So we could defer doing a project that would potentially lower or if we took one of those projects right off the map, would that then lower the basically $86 million?
So those are buckets of money. They're buckets of allocation. So we said we're gonna set aside 500,000 of the surplus from roads, and we're gonna put it in the road reserve. Again, that sits there. It's allocated for roads only. We can't use that money. Well, we can because it's council that has designated that. Council can say, we want to take that 500 out of roads and we want to do an arena. You have that flexibility. So again, reserves give you the flexibility. Reserve funds are earmarked money for specific purposes. So what we're looking at here is a combination of reserve funds where we got money backing. Again, I keep coming back to it, but it's the DCs is a very visible one. That is a reserve fund. We need to have money set aside to cover those DCs. Security deposits, those are all pieces where we need to have the money if someone comes in and wants to reserve their security to back. So those are in reserve funds.
Hey, sorry, Greg, I'm looking all right. Greg's got one.
Yeah,
I'll go to Steve.
well, this is the one I had before that I heard, but if you go to page 6 of the slide, the one that says the current non-consolidated debt position. No, slide 6. No. How did you pick what we are including under future debt? Because we passed a water and a wastewater rate study that shows that we're going to be taking on up to about, if I'm remembering right, 20 or 25 million in debt over the next 3 years. None of those projects are there.
So again, sorry to interrupt, but again, this is based on the end of 2025. So I'm giving you the pictures.
This is 2026. Like, I'm talking about the future debt.
Oh, that future debt because that was showing on the police. And I know it was a bone of contention
Yeah.
with council, so it's showing on there.
Okay, so we're not including the water and wastewater debt that we've already planned on doing. In the 2026 budget, there was also Beach Street at 137 Frank, which was another $2 million worth of debt. And we're taking on debt for the Mount Regis wastewater because of part of the trench, but then part of it's up $3 to $5 million in debt there. So put all of that together, there's about 30 million in debt that we've agreed that we're going to take. I'm just wondering how we picked the police station and not the rest of the $30 million in projects. I guess that's my question.
The answer to the question is this is off the budget documents that were circulated at the end of the 26 budget.
Yeah, so Beach Street and 137 were on that too, and they're not on this list though. They both had that.
They were on the 26 budget. This doesn't include any of the 26, other than the police.
Okay. So we've picked some projects. So I guess there's. But how did we pick not to put that other debt on there? And how did we pick only one project? I guess that was my question.
How do How do we pick just the police?
Why don't we have the other ones on there?
Because this is off the debt schedule and none of that debt has even been taken out yet. So these are completed projects and then below the future debt could be, you're right, we should be adding those other ones in there. We can add them.
I think that would be helpful.
You just check the veracity of 85 million of the wastewater.
Yeah, so keep in mind that we now have that $15 million
Right.
grant. So actually, we're down to less.
I'm just using numbers from the water and wastewater study. The water and wastewater study did not include projects that were already approved, which are our two sewage treatment plants.
It also didn't include 15.
But that wasn't in the study. It didn't include it because the wastewater plant is part of previously approved projects. And the water and wastewater rate study does not include previously approved projects, which are both wastewater plants and park house and all the other, because there's approximately $20 million of unfunded liabilities on the reserve sheet at the end of 2024 that are also not included here.
Now we're $15 million better because we weren't taking that money.
But you still
Except for
got,
how much the projects went up because we didn't update the cost of the projects.
Well, you'll bring it to us. So we have to look at all the debt. So Bill will bring it. Steve.
Yeah, so- To me, this is an issue of timelines, right?
Yeah.
So we do not need 71 million or 85 million in 2026.
No.
Right? As some of that stuff is planned out for the future. So for instance, we know on the north end of, I can't remember what was that area called, Rob? North Meadows, right? That there's a big park going in there, and that was in the DC study.
North Meadow Secondary Plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So there's money being collected to do that park. But we're not considering doing that park in 2026 or 2027 or 2028, but we're already collecting money for it. And at some point in time, that bill's gonna come due. So, I mean, that's why we have so much money, because we identified pieces that need to be done in the future. But it's not like when you're looking at our cash position and our debt position, that all of this is gonna come to fruition in one calendar year. It's a much longer viewpoint. So I think that looking at and adding the budget that you just listed and saying, okay, so these are what we anticipate will happen in the next 10 years. How much do we actually need to do those projects? And that will probably give us a good idea about what we need to repay ourselves, because we're still collecting as we're doing those things, right? And to provide us with a balance of money that will allow us to continue to operate without taking out vast amounts of debt to complete every project.
Okay, no, Deputy Mayor had his first.
Just a real quick, on the slide where you had, the three circles, the debenture outstanding, identifying internal borrowing, but establishing this in the debt policy. I think that's really critical to this conversation, because if we run the exercise and then put the policy in, we may well be outside the policy that we've already created, where the policy coming into play is more holistic. And then we get to apply the policy to some of our decision making, which may say how much debt we can take or how much debt we should take. So I'd like to see the policy.
So far, we've seen one alliteration,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
So we just gotta add in that self-funding piece. That's the last piece. So we add that in, so we can have that in June.
Okay, I got Bo, then you, John.
so when we talk about, we're going to pay ourselves back for future projects, who is writing the check? Paying ourselves back? Taxpayer?
Journal entry, there's still money that,
So you're not actually, nobody's paying anybody back. Like we saw, I guess what I'm trying to get at is we paid for the project's tax dollars that were already collected.
And,
So if you,
and user fees.
and user fees. So we've hit the people once for the projects. Right? Now, if we pay ourselves back, whether it be through just taxation, saying we need this, or we take on debt. Now, this debt has to go here to help pay for the next projects. Otherwise, if it doesn't, we're just making people pay for these projects twice.
Not
So-
really. You kind of, so.
Well, if you tax,
Because we've
to-
already taxed and we've taken the cash, right? So the
Yeah.
cash has been spent. We're gonna create like an internal debenture, so it's a loan. And then it's gonna be paid from, say it's coming from a reserve. It's just an allocation of the
but,
reserve against the loan.
just go back. How do we fill reserves? How do we get our money?
Well, one of two things, you can deplete a reserve
Yeah.
and then that reserve's done. And then you don't have to pay anything back if you don't want it.
I get it, but how do we get our money to create a reserve, to pay a debt, to do anything?
So unfortunately, as a municipality, we have two ways, really, to be honest with you. Taxation and user fees. Or
Grants.
grants, yes.
You can find that. So what you guys did throughout the course of your 10 years, where you said we did small projects because we could do them within that fiscal year, right? So you said, we're putting $1 million into Beach Street. We're gonna pay it out of taxes this year. The tax rate is this, right?
Yep.
Then you took the surplus out of your operational, put it into reserves, put it into reserves. That's,
And the DC.
and I get DC, well, DC's has got a bunch of crap here, but you can only spend DC's on DC's. This 50 million that you jammed in, or 30 million that you put aside and said, well, look, we got 30 million in the bank account. That was taxes.
No, we've never said we have 30 million in the bank account.
Well, I
We
just,
say we have
I asked you what this was here, this BMO investments of 20 million, sorry. And you said, we had 20 million in a bank account.
Yeah.
We put it in for investments.
Right. Yep.
How do we get 20 extra million? We tax for it. So when you build up these great reserves, you've already taxed people. So now we're building projects with these tax dollars. And maybe they're not the tax dollars that we put aside for them because they're the reserve funds. But somewhere along the line here, we've got 50 million already out, which is in a fund, the obligatory reserve fund. That's projects, is that not? Or,
That's just a listing of the different reserves.
so they're already, but that's committed because it's funds.
It's funds available. It's not.
But I thought you said funds were committed to
Right,
projects.
yeah,
Okay, deferred revenue, not a fund, that's 5.2 million.
But that's cash, so deferred revenue is typically grants that we receive, for instance.
Yep.
That sit and wait until the project's finished.
And I get that. I guess what I'm pointing out to you is even out of this 71 million that we have here, the 85 million, 50 of it is already committed. 23 of that is development charges, so it's specific for where that's going. What we have left is security deposits. Well, we know where that goes. We don't get to spend that. The discretionary reserves is 5.1 million and the deferred revenue is 5.1 million. So there's 11 million out of this 85 that I guess we could put somewhere. Maybe we've already kind of allocated it, but we haven't specifically named it.
So that's exactly what the point is, that when we're dealing with cash and commitments, it deals with flexibility. So if you've got under your commitments that are funds, then there's almost zero flexibility because you're saying, this is how we're going to spend it. So you can't show any flexibility on how you're spending that money. So that's the key here is the flexibility. The more flexibility we have, so in a reserve, it can move around wherever, but it's not tied necessarily to money.
Councilor Brennan.
I think Councillor Clark made a really good point that we're looking at timelines here. If you take a look at what happened to 2024, we look at our position right now, I think we'd be looking at like where are we in 5 years? Where are we in 10 years in terms of the timelines of what we have in terms of projects that are going to be coming up in the next 5 to 10 years? We don't need the money this year. We have to make sure as this council that the money will be there in 7 years or 8 years or 11 years when other things come due. Just like 10 years ago, when we made decisions that make sure that money's available now. So we're looking at about 5 or 10 year horizon to make sure that future councils are going to be in a better position than we are now, just like we were in a better position than we were 10 years ago.
Councilor Wilsey, then we'll wrap up.
So the only thing I want to say at that point is we have to look at what we've done, this council for projects we've approved, and we'll tax from what we have. I'm going to bring up 2 examples. This is the fire station that we did early in this. So we approved that, not knowing the cost. didn't collect taxes for it, and now we have to pay debt for it. Or take it out of reserves or do something. We put that project in,
I think we knew the cost.
but we knew the cost, but we didn't know we were gonna pay for it. Like, we know how much, it's like the other ones.
We were taking out, sorry to interrupt, but we were taking out a loan.
Yeah.
And we haven't taken out that loan.
But we didn't, this is what we're here for. We don't know what the cost is gonna be of that loan until just now.
So-
This year with the, I have the floor right now.
Sorry.
We didn't know what the cost of that loan was gonna be until we just saw it in this last little bit. And we just did the same thing with the police station in this budget. So we have $20 million worth of projects that we haven't taxed for. We've been told we were gonna take debt out for it, and now we're trying to decide if we're actually gonna take debt out for those $20 million worth of projects. Just, it is what it is, but
Counselor, we did tax for it actually, on the debt schedule. We saw that, gave debt schedule, proposed payments, because it was actually in your motion to begin to take those payments, I remember that. So we began that 2 years ago.
yeah, we did that for 1 year, and then,
Right.
then it got taken out, no, it got taken out the second year, because the project was coming off. We
Well, we
decided to
did-
take that out, so that we only did it for 1 year, and then we decided we didn't need to do that anymore.
So to address the issue of the taxation and the debt, in the debt policy, you'll recall that we had a thing, a clause that said any major projects, we will do construction loans. So as soon as, I'll use a police annex as an example. As soon as we really should be taking out a construction loan, as soon as we know that number for basically, and we have said that 500,000 is coming out of reserves and the other 9.5 million is coming out of, is being paid by debt. So every time we bring a project forward in the capital budget, we show exactly where that money's coming from. And so what we've done is we showed the police station, the fire station, we were showing a debt taken out on that. We haven't taken that debt out. In hindsight, what we probably should have done is taken out a construction loan on that project, got our payments as the bills came in the door, and then converted that loan, that construction loan into the debenture, and that would have been as per council policy.
So what do we do? No, but then, so the question is, you want to put these policies in place, right? This is what's gonna come next, right? Is all these policies. Are we going to get ourselves, I would say, back to square before we do these?
I'm sorry, do which ones?
Well, if our plan was to take debt for these projects.
Yeah.
Why then are we questioning whether we're gonna take debt for it?
Well, I think it's actually an opportunity, right? If we don't need, I agree with you. I don't want to take this, but I think we have an opportunity to look at it, knowing our cash position, knowing where we are, that we may not have to take it. We could certainly go through and put debt on every project if that's the will of council. But I think we have an opportunity to go back and say, we're in such a good cash position, we may not need to.
But are we in such a good cash?
Yes, we are. I heard him say it. I heard them.
Okay, but I guess that's what I've been asking you. So then what I would then want to see is, what if we actually got out of this 84 million? What do you owe? What have we committed to out of this 84 million if we're in such great possession?
Well, we don't know anything.
Well, thank you. So why would you make a decision and say, oh, we're in a great cash position?
We are.
You're proving my point. I said we got 10 million. That's not accounted for out of this, right? That still puts us at 71 million. And yes, I know it's all not due tomorrow. But if we don't know what we have that we can knock off and say we're not going to do.
So I think part of what I asked the director, when he brings back a report on financing, what is the effect on our reserve funds to do that? So we can make an informed decision.
I think what we should know is what we've committed to. If we've got 50 million committed, where's it committed to? And what are we at?
We'll bring that list as well.
Yeah, and we did have, by the way, we did have the reserve report.
It's not just the what, it's the when.
Yes,
It's the timeline. And that's 5, 10, 15 years stretching ahead of us. We don't need all the money in the next year and a half.
But you don't want to have previous people paying, like, what I don't want to see happen is at some point, we get to a point where we either have to take a boatload of debt to get ourselves back square, right? And I know we're gonna put in some of these policies to do this and that, but right now, there is a funding gap of 14 million, and I know you don't need it all today. This is the whole point. But even some of the biggest ships sink pretty quick.
My answer to that would just be through the chair. If we take, look where we were in 2014 versus where we are now, we've managed very nicely, and we're in a wonderful position compared to 10 years ago.
So-
And if we
Okay,
continue with the
let's not
same,
debate it.
just saying, let's do the chair, but then
Yep.
if we continue in the same fashion, on if we're looking at a 10-year timeline, I think 10 years from now, we'll be even stronger.
Okay. So do you have something there, Mr. Dakin, that you can, or to bring back the council? I think it is bring back the debt policy and begin to look at each of, if it is possible not to take the debt, and come back with a recommendation for council or recommendations for council will look at it and decide what to do. But I do somewhat agree. Better definition, looking at the reserves and where the allocations are, just a true definition of what a commitment is, right? You've got your sticky notes and your envelopes. Any further questions? Motion to adjourn at, I don't have those. Oh, sorry, we got to receive it for information. I saw the hand up. Councillor Pelton, Councillor Palmer, all in favor. Motion to adjourn at 6:26. 6:27, Mayor, second, Councillor Pelton, all in favor. How many? Yeah. Get that.